through, saying, appreciating what you thought of the speech, it meant the boss took them to heart and basically said, right, you can do it again next year then. So I'm not quite sure if it's tongue-in-cheek for the thank you, but it was much appreciated. So, if I can work the thing. I sat down this year and also thought, well, what can I actually come and speak to you about? Because there's been no new legislation particularly of any great interest. So the boss will, general sort of overview, because that's what she would normally do. So we'll try and run through a bit of an overview, give you some of the latest statistics, literally some of them hot off the press, not released yet, a bit about sort of the nature of the accidents we're getting and ill health, a little bit of enforcement overview, and then try and give you a bit of a feel for what the construction team in Bristol have been prioritising in the last year for our enforcement cases of what we've had. And you'll see it kind of reflects the general stats around the country. I believe we have at least one of the companies in the audience. So we have some expertise to be able to give their local side if you want to tweak them afterwards. Like I say, it gives you a bit of a change of what's come up. So in very, very broad terms, the statistics are very much flatlining. There's always a little bit of a peak and trough, but a little bit sort of statistically significant, no real change across the fatals, the number of reports and everything else. Which means in 2016-17, there were 137 people who went to their place of employment in the morning or the night shift and didn't come home. In addition to that, 92 members of the public that were killed in relation to work activities. It says mostly in railways, in social healthcare, but there are a number of other ones in the wider frame. So it's a bit of a reminder, really, why we're here and why we do what we do. Now, out of that 137, 40% of the worker fatals, so not necessarily the members of the public, were accounted for by two main causes. So, because you're all now widely awake, having had the initial thing about thinking it, anybody want to tell me what the two causes are? It's called audience participation at this point, yeah.
Falls from height.
Second one? So, shock horror, falls from height, and in theory, most of them struck by a moving vehicle. So, I said, the figures are broadly the same as they have been for a number of years. And to be honest, this graph, you could almost replicate year on year on year. Which says quite a lot, really, about what's going on. So you can see, yeah, moving vehicle, falls from height, moving object, things swinging round, collapses, possibly slightly put up by a few major collapses we've had in the last few years. Moving machinery, people are still getting entangled in my counterparts in the factories team, in the machinery, and unfortunately, contact with electricity. And one of the cases I will talk through, in fact the last one I will do, is linked to electricity, but fortunately, you might think, non-fatal. Now, that was 2016-17. The current published figures for the half year, April to September, are still to become about 97 fatalities in the first half of the year across the board. Now, they do sometimes go down slightly because you end up natural causes and things when they're assessed and finally put through the mill. So they're not finalised. The 137 last year originally, I think, started at 140 something. So it does sometimes come down slightly. But if you think in the context of half a year, was last year a good year? This year not so good? So the headlines. Again, I thought about putting these up as a compare and contrast to last year's slide, and they are almost identical. 1.3 million work-related ill health cases, either ongoing or newly reported every year. 70,000 non-fatal injuries to employees that are reported. the magic word being reported. If you look at the labour force surveys, you'll probably find they reckon it's about 600,000. So how many of those would be reportable is debatable, but way under-reporting still. 0.6 million non-fatal injuries. Labour force, complete contrast of a difference. Equating to 31.2 million days of work lost. Huge cost to the industry and the society in general. 14.9 billion a year. We're touching barely the tip of the iceberg for it. So putting it into a construction context, there were 30 fatalities in the last recorded work year at the end of the statistics. Still the highest single industry by cause. Not a good thing to be on top of the table for, really, but not necessarily unsurprising. The incident rate is still 3 times the average when you look at per number of employees across the board. So it's pretty high risk. But 30 was a record low. So at that point in time, everybody in construction turns around and goes for the pat on the back, thinks marvellous, we're under the 45 average, which has been for about the last 5 years because we got 30, so we're doing something right. This year, unfortunately, we are currently not finalised figures, but as of speaking to the boss to get the final figure the other day, we're currently on 48. I suspect we've got enough time to get to 50, unfortunately. So, peaks and troughs. So again, it's about the baseline figures. They are broadly flat. We're not quite breaking through. Why? All sorts of reasons. But pales into insignificance still when you go to the ill health. 80,000 cases a year in construction alone. It's 20% higher than the average compared to factory counterparts and councils and services and hospitals. Okay, so it's a bit more of a rugged industry, so you might expect a bit more, but would you expect a 90% higher rate of back injury? It says a lot. So it's not 90% of the 80,000, but it's almost doubling the average rate it's likely to get a back injury in construction. Why? Because it's still the macho image. Also, designers aren't still quite getting it right. They're not designing some of the bits out. Construction alone, the labour force survey says 64,000 injuries. Yeah, so without doing the maths, a 13th reported, roughly. So again, major unreporting. Why? Is it ignorance? You might say that. I'm currently doing an investigation where somebody inadvertently drove a dumper into a large hole in the ground and nearly took his ankle off. Depending on who you believe, you have a choice of the injured party saying, oh, the boss told the supervisor not to report it, probably because he got prosecuted last time he reported something. Or if you speak to the boss, strange enough when we did under caution, oh, I didn't think I had to do it. Well, everybody was telling you to do it, so why haven't you done it 3 months later when I've told you as well? So maybe, I think they might be able to come and talk to you about that one next year, because that's on their desk at the moment. So, this one, what are the causes? Again, looking at construction, you look at your work-related ill health, I said 90% higher incident rate, and 65% of the ill health is still down to bad backs, strains, sprains, poor posture, people just not going and planning it out, not using mechanical aids properly. Interestingly, stress, depression, or anxiety. For a macho industry, stress is remarkably high. Why? Because the site managers wear far, far too many hats. They have too little labour support, too little general workforce, not enough equipment, not enough time, not enough money. The clients are putting too much pressure on. They want it done yesterday for half the price. People are bidding to take it. Puts people under pressure and it starts to go wrong. And then you've got your other general things, which you'd think, even as a priority, the long-term diagnosis, silica, wood dusts, account for only, in theory, about 20% along related illnesses. The fatal injuries, slightly different to the general picture, but falls from height. 49% of all fatal injuries in construction are due to gravity, because somebody can't find the switch to turn it off. Trapped by something collapsing or overturning. The average, balancing out similar to struck by a moving vehicle. So between the three of them, this is a number of year average, we're accounting for 70% roughly with 3 causes. What's so difficult about digging a big hole in the ground, putting up a wall? Been doing it for years. Building hasn't changed. The vehicles, they're getting bigger. Maybe people are getting less training on it. I don't know. But they're still the primary causes. So it reflects in the fatal figures, and it will reflect, as you'll see, in the prosecutions and accidents we've been dealing with. What is interesting is that figure of 49% of falls from height has actually triggered concern in the hierarchy, to the extent of members of Parliament are actually set up a little committee to look at the work at height regulations. So somebody's gone, why are we getting all these fatals from work at height in construction? So they've jumped in and gone, right, we'll go and sort it out. And we're going to do a mass look at, we're going to look at the guidance, see if it's fit for purpose. We're going to look at the regulations, see if they're fit for purpose. And we're going to work out and get something put out there, why, and get it stopped. Well, what's the problem? Work at height regulations? Fairly simple. It says plan it. Prevent it, manage it. What's the guidance say? Go and get the right sort of equipment. What do people do? Throw that away, go straight up and get on with things. Before I got here this morning, I got one of next year's prosecutions. We had a member of the public complain, sent a photo in, and the boss sent it on to me, and that's probably what I'll be doing the rest of this week. I'll go and get some statements, and yet again, another fall from height prosecution. The guidance is out there. Why aren't people listening to it? Maybe as an audience, you need to be making sure, clamouring to your clients, this is going to start getting serious. They're looking at this, they're looking at the figures, they want to know why. Will we go back to change of legislation? I doubt it. It's non-prescriptive. Will we get some more guidance out there written? I doubt that as well. Do we need it? Not really. Everyone knows what they should be doing. It's not doing it. So, my favourite subject, enforcement. So there's been a very slight fall in the numbers of prosecution cases. Negligible. Why? Probably because of the time and bureaucracy it takes. The sentencing guidelines, which we'll talk about a little in a second, are really starting to kick in now and are starting to make a difference. So it's slowing the process down. There's been a very slight rise in the number of notices. Now, if anybody's been on the end of them, no, they're not all mine. However, construction by its very nature does account for around 60% of the notices. So as you can see, the split is very much on the broad bit in favour of a limited number of immediate prohibition notices and a significant number of improvement notices to try and go for longer term management. Construction, by its very nature, if I give an improvement notice, half the time it's complied by finishing on site and they've gone. So hence it's almost, not far off 50-50, probably 60-40 split. We're dealing with immediate risk most of the time. And going back to that figure, falls at height, I give you an improvement notice to go away and think about it for 21 days. That's 21 days of where for 49% are falling off that roof. Hence, immediately come down. I thought this was quite interesting when I saw this figure. The sentencing guidelines, which you were spoken to by solicitors, I think, the year before last, have now had a full calendar year to come into effect. The average conviction is now, per charge, around £77,000 each prosecution. And you can see how the graph has gone up rapidly. I guess eventually it will start to plateau, but nearly 70 million worth of fines from all prosecutions coming in, local authority and HSE. That's probably why it's now starting to get to the point where people are going to try and argue it more, which is why the numbers have come down. And that's fine, that's prerogative. Our policy hasn't changed in the slightest. We do not see the fine money. We try and recover our costs, but the fines go into the government coffers. So HSE policy has not changed in the slightest as well. So try and give you a bit of a feel for what we've been doing locally. Now, it will get a little repetitive, as our IT experts over there have already commented on. But I said 49% of the fatals are down to falls from height, green, and managed to save energy and things. So as you can see in the photo on the right, got a nice valley with a couple of boards. So up they went. The managing director, when he was doing the risk assessment and speaking to the estate, said, we've got an agreement with HSE that we can use a harness system. We don't have to use nets. We're still waiting for it. It just got lost in the post. We couldn't find it in our records. Strange that, isn't it? We have a perfectly amicable agreement with anybody who wants to use harnesses. I have no problem whatsoever. Can you just sign on the top of this prohibition notice, please? I agree entirely. Here you go. Off you go. No, didn't exist, but he's told the client. The client, in the defence, thought it's only genuine. So, okay, little bit gullible maybe. Should have known better probably, but there you well. So what they did was, went up on the roof and they're using an inertia reel, so a retractable reel, which was designed for using in the vertical. Well, last time I looked at the photo, it went horizontal. So they gave it to the lads, said, off you get on. And then the MD was up there on the first day, didn't bother training the guys and work at height or anything how to use it. And the MD was going off on holiday. I can't worry where he's going, but somewhere quite nice, somewhere sunny. So a mate of his says, I know somebody who can come and help us. He's not doing anything at the moment. He's a good lad. He'll come and do a bit of labour for us. He's a teacher by training. Not sure what subject, but it wasn't construction. Don't think it was physics either. He didn't seem to know much about gravity. So let's bring in this person who knows nothing about the building industry and stick him on a fragile roof. Oh yeah, he can read because he's a teacher and he can see the fragile roof signs on the side, so he knows it's fragile. And we'll stick him up there with a reel. So they carried on happily enough, putting stuff in. The work was pretty much complete, but because of a bit of disorganisation, they'd not got some materials, so there's a bit of a delay. So the classic happens. Take the initial rail off, we're going to finish off. Oh, we've left something up there. Then it back up there. 7.8 metre fall, fractured skull, jaw, wrist, elbow, pelvis, brain injury, and lung puncture. He wasn't a very well boy. He survived, but, you know, he wasn't in good shape. Certainly wouldn't be a PE teacher again if he was a PE teacher. Not with that kind of level of injuries. No chance. So strange enough, we put it forward, and putting it into the context of the sentencing guidelines, nobody really argued there was a level A risk harm, but at 7.8 metres it was going to sting coming down. We put it forward as high culpability. The MD was actively involved, first-hand knowledge. There was the fragile roof signs. We thought it was at least a medium risk because they were trying to do something. So the court kind of thought about it and brought it down to a medium risk. So I thought, well, they've been up there for a while, been doing it for a few days, it's protracted. The company was set at 70,000, reduced to 56,000. The MD was also sentenced as an individual under Section 37. Because we're going to try and get it home to him. His company, it could fold and disappear. But that was coming out of his pocket. Well, but the judge looked at this and we've got no money. So he had a suspended sentence and 150 hours of wearing a nice pink top with criminal on the back of it, going and picking up litter. Brings it home to him like nobody's business because the people who are doing this kind of level of stuff are very much, it happens to other people and they've got a certain status and used to bullying people around. So to be brought down to that level is quite humiliating for them. And they were initially going to go not guilty on that. Oh, we've got a harness system, HSC have agreed. Yeah. They eventually pled, and that's why it was reduced down. If they'd have gone for a complete not guilty, there's a very good chance of we had one that isn't in this one a couple of years ago, where it was an overhead power line strike. And they pled not guilty, and the judge sat there and left the jury out, and he called them in and said, right, before we start, I have this exhibit in my hand. It's called GS6, Guidance for Overhead Power Lines. I can see this picture in it with power lines and barriers and things. I have a picture in my other hand of your site. I'm looking at the two. I can't see any barriers or lines or anything in this one. Go back to the first one. The jury will have this in their hand. The jury will have this picture in their hand. The jury will be able to see no barriers and things. Shall I give you half an hour, gentlemen, to go and reconsider your decision? Came back and pleaded guilty. I think something similar would happen with this one. It's a no-brainer. We're not going out there for people who, he's fallen 7.8 metres, he's severely injured. It's clear standards. Why? The Parliamentary Committee are looking into this. They'll be able to see the clear standard. They'll be able to compare and contrast. And they're going to go, it's simple. The guidance says do this. They didn't. What their answer is going to be, I don't know. So, next one. A theme. Unfortunately, a lot of them are agricultural. C&R construction. This one, unfortunately, was a fatality. So the photo on the left gives you a bit of a scale of what they're building. So not a small shed, pretty big. And then the photo on the right shows a nice roof. And they've tried to put up some edge protection. And on first glance, you think, well, yeah, they've tried. It's not too bad. It's not a particularly steep pitch roof. No, in fact, it's only a 15-degree pitch. And it surprised us, to be honest. There was a 500mm gap underneath the ladder beam. You can see, I'm pointing this thing, look yourself. So there's a 500mm gap under there. Nothing. Might struggle to fit through it nowadays, but probably could. It should have been 250mm max. 15 degrees, barely anything, it's almost flat. Probably consider walking along it potentially. We can't say definitively whether he collapsed, had a heart attack, and then fell down, or why he went under. The reality is, it shouldn't matter. He slid down that roof to the edge protection and kept going. And the injuries when he hit the deck were fatal, unfortunately. They failed to assess the site, the edge protection, quite simply. This wasn't sufficient. There was a lack of training for the guys in installing it to understand the principles of where it needed to be. The company got a £100,000 fine on costs. Might be a pittance for the size of the company, but it reflects in the sensitivity guidelines. The judge actually took the barristers in chambers aside later and said, why didn't you prosecute the director? I don't think we quite had the evidence to quite pin it down, is the reason why. But the judge looked at it and went, this is clearly so grossly negligent. Why was an individual not held accountable? Quite simple, really. Slightly smaller, Eco NRG, and yet another director. So, starting to see the trend yet? Installing solar panels, only 3 meters high, next to nothing. No nets, no edge protection. Complete lack of crawling boards, fragile roof. Back to our old favourite, going to use the harnesses again. And they didn't, that's beside the point. So what happened? Well, broken back in 3 places, and then he had to crawl 60 feet with a broken back to get to the van for his mate to take him to hospital. Imagine how much agony he was in, crawling to get there. The boss alleges he tried to report it. Well, we didn't take that charge in the end because one way or another wasn't considered appropriate at the time. But he didn't bother reporting it. He tried to get that to go under the radar. Hence, we are back to the director. First-hand knowledge, first-hand control. Clearly high culpability. The employees went, should we be doing that, boss? Now get on with it. You want to keep working? The usual answer. It's way below the standards. And it went on for an extended period of time of days doing the work in the judge's eyes. Clearly, it's a level A harm, that kind of height. And it's a high likelihood of it happening. So 115,000 for the company, 5,000 for the director. Don't know what his budget was. It's going to sting, I suspect. You know. So, next, scaffolders. They are a breed unto themselves. And one of the questions, ever since I've been on the construction team for the last 5 or 6 years, is I've never quite understood why we don't have more accidents to scaffolders. We do have them, and I think they're even worse for reporting, but this is one such. This is a few miles up the road to some extent. We got the call from the police. He landed about there. I think I narrowly missed him when I got to site. We were up there within about an hour of the accident. He fell from up here. 6.4 metres, well, I think it was 6.4 I worked out at by counting the bricks, because I wasn't going up on the scaffold. It was being struck. That was the plan. They had another one around the corner, I was going to strike it. And he's up on the top lift, so he's perched here. Now then, the photo's not wondrous, but for the eagle-eyed, you might notice something's missing. Anybody spot what it is? Across here, around here, because they've moved it up here when they started striking it. Now, last time I checked the guidance, that wasn't the correct technique. So the first thing he said, well, okay, how did he fall off? Why wasn't he left suspended by his harness? That's because the only harness they had between the three of them was in the van. Really effective, though. We then get to the training. So he sat up here at 6 metres. He was 21, and he'd been due to be working in the yard as a labourer that morning, and tossed a coin with the other yard oppo who was going to go out and labour because he was keen. The boss knew he'd gone out, no major issue, lets him get on with it. So he goes out, he's going to do the job. He then pesters the guys, oh, I want to try and do a bit of striking and stuff. So the supervisor lets him get on with it. This is a bloke who doesn't even have a labourer's ticket because they haven't even got to that point. So he's got no training whatsoever in scaffold. Worked for him for a little while. Next, no scaffold step. I used to think this was a myth when I first started in construction, until I finally found somebody actually using one. And even now, if I see somebody use one, I must have to stop to check my glasses are okay. It shouldn't be. A scaffold step, for those of you who don't know, the idea is you would build your first lift, board it out from the ground by simply standing and pushing it up. You then use the good old-fashioned raising device, often a milk crate, stand on the bottom, to be able to set the next rail above you. And then you can stand up there and work on a single scaffold rail as a scaffolder, as long as you're not within 1 metre of the end of it. Because there's got to be an element of risk for the nature of the job. You then hang the scaffold step, it's like a S shape, on the rail at head height, clip on behind you, repeat process, so you are constantly building the lift above you. And strange enough, striking, you do the reverse. Again, the scaffold step, well, don't want to get that dirty, do we? We'll leave it back in the yard. So it wasn't even on the van. So there's no hope of using it. Well, first thing I did when I walked up to site was I looked at that and went, didn't use the scaffold step when they built it either. Why? Because what they don't do is take the rails out halfway through when when they finished building it to use elsewhere. They need to leave them in to strike it. So they never used it when they built it either. So already, I know it wasn't put up safely either. So, okay, so we carry on, and I look at the name and thought, I'm sure I remember them. And yeah, strange enough, I do. I came across them one Sunday morning in the middle of Bristol when I was out shopping with my good lady and the kids. Yeah, we're not on duty 24/7. I have something of a conscience, apparently somewhere, so people tell me. And I saw this scaffolder, well actually there were 2 or 3 of them, top lift, about 5 lifts up, so opposite by Debenhams, if you know where that is, in the middle of Bristol, walking around, no harness or anything. Being Sunday morning, no, I was going to get earache if I did too much from the boss. I had a quiet word with him. So I grabbed one young lad and said, look, can you just go and get your harnesses? And I got mouthful. You can't come in here, it's a construction site, as I'm stood on the pavement, and a pram comes by me in front of it. So, okay, no problem. So she went off to go and get coffee with the kids. I walked back to the car. I got my kit out. I got my warrant out. I walked back down, took the photo and climbed up the outside of the scaffold. By Monday morning, boss had sacked him. Lives up in here in the memory. Strange enough, it was also on paper. Lack of supervision. So, they had previous advice. The young lad, now it's a little bit interesting with this one, and I explain the injuries in this instance are actually quite interesting. Because he suffered a fractured skull and lost one eye. Now I say interesting, because he has no hand injury. From 6.4, just over 6 metres. My instinct is break my fall. I don't know why he didn't. So we went for a culpability. Well, yes, we accepted some of the other employees had training. The supervisor, who'd been doing it years, said, no, never had training in SG4 use. There was clearly inadequate monitoring and supervision because it was built without using it. They had no system to make sure the kit went out to site. They'd been warned before. We went with the medium culpability because it kind of balanced. They had some attempt. The harm, yeah, level A. The likelihood, it was dropped to medium on the basis of, well, otherwise they'd be dropping like flies because the number I stopped to deal with it. Why? In my mind, I'm afraid, do you not try and break his fall? I don't know. Whether there's something underlying, I don't know. But had he been using the scaff, step and harness, he would have been left suspended until such time as they got him down safely. So it kind of becomes an irrelevance, but I still think he had a dizzy spell and went down. The fine reflected the size of the company, the medium culpability, and we came to an amicable agreement with the solicitors, and we agreed. I was in a good mood, I think, that day. And they came out at the end, the judge sentenced at the end 26,000, but she really got her teeth into the lack of scaffold step. She was really, really keen on that one because she could see it was a very simple tool and couldn't see why they weren't using it. Nowadays, they have 2 improvement notices to make sure the kit went out there and 1 for supervision. The thing that potentially then hurts is this injured party, it was picked up as part of our wider work at height campaigns, and the national press, I think it was in the Daily Mail, ran an article in the end as part of it, and he's been speaking to the national press as well. So that name is now bandied out there of the company in the wider audience, which is great on the CV for advertising to try and get contracts. Okay, next one. We have a large timber frame site on the edge of a large body of water. Until not long ago, I would have said this was a genuine concern. There's always a little bit of politics behind it, we just haven't had it before. So you can see, I've broken it now. Large crane, big expanse of timber, houses next to it, bit of land, might be subject to a bit of erosion. 1,800 square metres of timber frame, edge of sea cliff. I've got work at height, I've got temporary works, I've got excavations, I've got lifting operations, I've got plant maintenance. None of it was really adequately controlled. It was raised, I initially thought it was a genuine consent. There's always a little bit behind there somewhere. So the site was prohibited. The crane mat design was completely wrong, really. There was no temporary works management. There was no off-site fire risk assessment. A big timber frame that size next to houses, it's a bonfire waiting to happen. The plant wasn't maintained, missing mirrors. The excavation was battered back. It wasn't shored. The case was actually quite gentle in the end, because we narrowed it down to pin it down. So you look at the battering, there you go, nice angles. Yeah, and yeah, let's stick a bit of loading on this side, put a bit of weight on. Yeah. It's, show me a civil engineer's report that says it's not going to go in a month for Sundays, and let them take the risk. Because quite simply, no. So it was put forward as a high culpability. There's clear industry measures that weren't adhered to for anything really. The history, to be fair, is colourful, repeated. I think is a fairly reasonable description of our interactions with this company. The inspector who took the case had been giving repeated, regular advice to try and get to management to think about it. They do seem to be learning the lessons, to be fair now, and do seem to be improving drastically. But it was systematic failings across the board. There's no injury counted with this one. It's just we eventually hit a point of enough is enough. Well, it's difficult because you got no injury. Everything had the potential of a fatality, and that was kind of accepted. It was thrown in sort of medium because you never quite say, and the probability is always a bit of a judgment. So the court looked at the sentencing guidelines and they put forward a financial argument which effectively would have tipped them over the edge if the court sentenced what they wanted to do. So they used the step back principle and said, well, we would have fined pretty much getting on for twice that, but they stepped it back to something that was going to send the message home. And it's getting through to the directors to say, look, it's quite simple, this is serious. You've had warning after warning after warning. In this instance, the company were taken because of the range of the failings. Now, the directors have been very clearly told, so they're in a position, if something comes up again, the second name against the company name. Last year when I came down, I was in the middle of this one, which I think one inspector across in Basingstoke spent half his life, I think, on this one. Sarum Asbestos Limited and Mr. Jeremy Uphill. A character, if ever there was one. This is a company that do, or did, in our administration, it's gone off the radar, asbestos surveys. They're not bad, to be fair. Very good at surveys. Identify, AIB, asbestos cement, lagging, identify stuff that requires a licence, remove it. Sounds all right. So they check the database. Oh yeah, they haven't got a licence. Seems to forgot that bit. So they know what they're doing, and they're doing it anyway. And it's not a one-off. It's actually about a 3-year period before we managed to pin them down. And that's only because we actually stopped bothering getting any more investigations when they came in, so we can actually get it to court. Interesting. My technology is beyond me at this point in time. This is where I flag for help. If I touch something, I'll break it entirely. Didn't turn off the Wi-Fi, did you? Thank you. Yeah, thank you for my glamorous assistant for the technical management. So it was over an extended period of time. The first one was about 2.5 to 3 years before the prosecution, for various reasons, crossing the Basingstoke area. And then they found a second site. Unfortunately, the inspector had his wife dying of cancer, which kind of became his forefront, so it delayed it slightly. Otherwise, maybe it wouldn't have been extended as it was. So we had the first two in Basingstoke, and then they found a third. And then one of my colleagues found one Salisbury Way. Then I got another 2. So we ended up with 6 different sites that we were aware of. The 6th was one of those interesting scenarios where somebody rang in a not in my backyard complaint to the concerns team saying they're undertaking asbestos works. Shouldn't they have hoarding all the way around our building to protect us? So the concerns team went, yeah, green, not that, no risk. It says it's got licensed contractor in there, fine, they're sorted, because it spoke to the principal contractor. So they sent it down to me for intelligence. And I thought, wonder who did that then? And I rang up the principal contractor. I'm chatting away to him. Oh, did you like your asbestos works then? Carry on chatting. Oh, yeah, Sarum Asbestos. Oh, yeah, okay. Carry on chatting to him. And it went, plunk. Is it Sarum? I said, yes. You got any paperwork? Yeah, why? Hold on to it. I'm on my way. Literally. Only about 2 weeks after, otherwise we'd caught them red-handed doing it. I missed them by a day on another job. So, in the end, it was a charge against company director for 6 sites, and we pretty much went through the regulations. There was debris left on site. The final site is long since after the first round of interviewing the caution with the company, where he comes in and tried to argue with the inspectors that HSE was wrong, he didn't need a licence for lagging. And I thought, no, that's not really much dispute there, really. Some things sometimes there might be a little bit grey, but most stuff he was doing was like, no. So the 2 directors came in, so they've gone through 1 round of interviewing the caution. And the sites, there's debris left there, everywhere. To the extent the final one, I said to the principal contractor, well, I can't make you, but they've given me a clearance certificate. So I would strongly advise you get an independent analyst to go in and just have a look before you do any more works. And the analyst, it was like, imagine sort of like meerkats coming out of their holes with a pop back. He said, he went up to this loft space, didn't know what's going on, stuck his head up, went, and shut the place down. Debris, like he said, it looked like somebody tried to hide the lagging debris in the loft installation. And the suspicious hole in the ceiling where they swear was there, it wasn't there, and somebody else did it when they spoke to them. I'm sure that was a foot through and dropped the bags down. But so there's debris everywhere. Removal techniques, absolutely abysmal. Enclosures, you want them for? Masks? Nah, I'm messing about that. They were actually getting some stuff and taking it back to their yard, taking it out of bags that they've got, and then scraping it off in the open yard. They've basically given people a death sentence. No 2 ways about it. Multiple people exposed, members of the public leaving stuff around. So strange enough, we got the regulations and we went, breach, 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 breach. Right, which ones are we going to do? I think in the end, we threw in a few of the Health Safety Work Act and a few asbestos regulations just out of principle, just to say that we got there. 8 charges laid against company and director across the different sites. Had the sentencing guidelines gone to the potential, he would have got out of prison in 2021, I think. Was the kind of level he was, longer than that, but 2 years in Crown. He was going to be, so strange enough, we threw it up as high culpability. Yeah. It all went, they started going, not guilty. So they're going to push all these sites, all the previous warnings, they're going not guilty. So, okay. So we put it forward as high culpability, because clearly it was. The harm. There is an argument that some of my ex-colleagues have tried, who've got out into industry, will try and argue the risk hasn't been realised yet. The courts do not buy that. Health and safety offences are based on a risk of something happening. We do not have to have the accident or the ill health or the injury to be in breach. The courts recognise that. And strangely enough, the word asbestos scares the hell out of all of them. So the court recognised there was a long-term health risk. So this was clearly a level A, highest category, risk of death. How do you quantify it? Well, we're not going to say low, and we can't say high because we've got to wait 40 years to prosecute. So it was thrown in as a medium, as a halfway ground. They went not guilty. The company were in administration at the time, and we had a bit of fun trying to get the administrators to allow the director to plead on their behalf. And we don't plead bargain, but in the end, 2 of the charges were left on file because it just wasn't worth the argument about whether the soffits were licensed for work or not. They clearly were, but the public interest was such that they were offering to plead to 6, so it wasn't going to make a blind bit of difference to the sentence. So 2 charges are permanently left on file if for some reason they ever came up again. So the company administration, no money. The judge said, don't care. Still fining 100,000. So it go against creditors and people. So somebody will pay for somebody else's misdemeanor. Mr. Uphill. We're going to be a collective 9 months, reduced to 6 months for eventually pleading. It was suspended purely on the grounds that his wife was disabled and he was the primary carer. He was 66, 67, not in the best of health himself. The judge was still prepared to consider sending him down at that point in time, despite his age, because of the severity. Costs, no, you're going to get them back. Company's gone, but we will still take the case if it is in the public interest. Okay. Now this is the one where you're all used to HSE inspectors coming in and being who we are. Well, to try and prove we are human, this is one of these cases that is going to stick with me for the rest of my career and beyond. It'll probably stick with me for a bit until I get the next unfortunate one. I don't know how many of you saw in the news this gentleman, but this is Mr. Jamie Mines. As you can see, we've got 2 names up again, so we've got the director involved. Now, Mr. Mines is missing there, 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 and there. He is effectively quadriplegic. He has no arms, no legs. Where it looks like it is the miracle of what they can do with the prosthetics. They actually put his tattoos on his prosthetics for him, which I thought was quite nice. Now, this one was hard, no 2 ways about it. The young lady in the picture is one of 2 twins that were 6 months old, coming up to their first Christmas when he had his accident. So, you think, okay, what's going to do this to this gentleman? Now, he's a scaffolder, or in the scaffolding industry. So what's going to do it? Well, he stood up here where the big black arrow is pointing to the temporary roof that they were putting on in their own scaffolding yard. Under these interesting bits of wire above him. Anybody care to guess what they are? Anybody care to guess what voltage they are? 33,000. 33,000, supplying half of one of the industrial estates on Swindon. The investigation was remarkably quick to some extent. It initially came in, and I thought scaffold yard storage, so we threw it to the local authority. And the next morning after it happened, I was coming into the office, my boss rang me up and said, "Let's go and give them a hand." So by the time they're going to get on site, so I said they're going to be there first thing, about 8 o'clock coming into the office or something. So I turned around the motorway, whipped up there thinking, right, they're going to be there, getting on. No, they turned up about 9:30. So their concept of first thing in construction a bit different to mine. I rocked up, and what was quite scary initially, when I got out of the car, and I got, "Morning, Ian." "Hello." I knew the Scottish Southern Electric guys. Looked up, "So what we got?" "Oh, yeah." That's pretty much the investigation. At that point in time, I went into prosecution mode. I've been on site 30 seconds. Looked up, gone, yep. So he stood on the sheet roof. Now, while I've got the picture up, we're talking electricity on this one. Can anybody spot any of the hazards? If you can't, leave the room now. So what we have is to give you the clue. How do you think you're going to get up there? Well, there's this really convenient ladder that you can walk all along across here on technically a metal tin roof, but it's been up there as long as I can remember, because this was probably the last unit on the estate that I hadn't inspected at that point in time when I was on the factories team. Not entirely true, because the one next to it was a little car body shop. So I actually went to have a cup of coffee with him, see if he saw anything when I was doing the investigation. So I've now been in every unit on that estate. So I think probably served notice on every one of them as well. So he's gone up there. This is just before the Christmas. So it's next to the pre-existing roof. Been up there donkey's years. It was 2.8 metres from feet to lines. Now I don't think I'd quite jumped that high. He was a bit taller than me originally. But he's practically headbutting the lines. The roof sheets that are being lifted from here by his mate, who's a trainee scaffolder, and passing them up to him, are 2.56 metres in diagonal cross section. That's a pretty big bit of metal that is going to bend down, pick up. Ooh, yeah. So let's work out height issues. That's the first thing. There were some issues around his training. He had come from another scaffolding company. He didn't actually hold any recognised scaffold training in the end. But, yeah, you might say that's down to him, and he kind of fobbed the company off. Took me 2 minutes on the internet to go into the database and look him up to find out he didn't hold any. So I then carried on doing the rest of the employees, having got all the list of names, so I could find somebody that got full training. I think I had 1 or 2. The company should have picked it up. Did it cause the accident? No. Were they using SG4? I said about the fall previously? No. Walking across an open space. That caused the accident? No. The access, completely open space. And entertainingly, when the ambulance came, sometimes you kind of just give up the ghost in an emergency situation. Anybody like to hazard a guess at how they got him down? The clue is there, and a pallet. They took the paramedic on a parrot with a kit to go and tend him, because fortunately his mate stopped him from rolling off the roof, because I would have put my hair a bit more. But I'm not sure I really noticed at that point. Do I really care? At that point in time, I kind of give up, really. It's not good. I was more worried that the paramedic was prepared to go and do it, because that's the good old hero syndrome of jumping in, so I could have ended up with multiple fatalities, which wouldn't have helped anybody. So, there we go. So, what did we do? Well, we put it forward as a high culpability charge. It was actually sentenced as a medium in the end, and I'm quite happy to give comments afterwards if somebody wants them on the sentencing, but the judge gave reasons. The harm, strange enough, wasn't disputed. Nobody argued it wasn't level A, harm category 1, high risk. The company, 80,000 from 120,000. The individual director, 6 months suspended sentence, because the district judge wanted to keep it. He did a written judgment. I've never known a written judgment in over 17 years. The judge had to go away and think about it. In court, I got $1 million question of, well, if I follow your sentencing guidelines, Mr. Whittles, I'll have to send him down immediately. Would you like to comment? Not really. It's not my place. That's what sentencing guidelines are there for. Comment them as you wish. What was hard about it? Well, after he hit the lines, December the 19th, day before my youngest's birthday. So I spent my youngest's birthday going out to go and investigate it. Why did we go out immediately? Because when I was taught as a trainee, we were told, if you get an overhead power line strike and they're conscious, you go and speak to them in hospital, because they might not be there 3 days later when they finish cooking inside. Couldn't speak to him for about 3 months, because they put him in an induced coma initially, and then when they tried to bring him up, he tried to sit up in bed. strangely enough, found it a bit difficult. So I had to put him back in to an induced coma to be able to treat him. When I say treat, what I mean is deal with the effects of necrosis of the tissue death and keep cutting bits off of him for the next 3 months. Until he got to the point of one arm here, one arm there, 1 foot already there, and he'd lost half a foot initially. It's really bad. When I went to go and see him, he was due to go back in surgery just before the court case to take off the rest of his remaining foot to be able to fit the prosthetic easier. So he spent 3 months in induced coma through his twins' first Christmas. So, strange enough, we put it through to the court, and a couple of days before the court, I went to go and see him to chat about a victim personal statement. And I try and avoid doing them because I don't like doing them. I usually send somebody else. And he sent something in his own words, and he sent me on email. I was driving home, I saw it sort of flash up. And I saw the first sentence. I had to pull over. It said, having to wake up to find you have no arms and legs. Or something to that effect. So I pulled over, read it, went and got a cup of coffee, then carried on driving home. I thought, okay. And then we submitted it to the court, and the district judge, I'm in there, having made a few comments. So you've got victim personal statement, sir, if you wish to refer to it. For the benefit of the public court, would you care to read it out? Not really, but on the spot. I managed it, I was proud of myself, without breaking down. I read it, I went through it, took a very deep breath and read it through. It's very, very powerful, very hard to deal with. And that's why the judge in the end, he looked at it and all of the things. He was a semi-professional footballer. They were doing loads of fundraising for him. The scary bit, the bugger was so positive. It was horrible. I've never known anybody as inspiring as him that can be that positive, having gone through what he's gone through. I'm not sure I'd want to come out from that, personally, but he did. Why? These two dribbly little snotty-nosed girls that were running around in their nappies when I was down there taking a statement. Yeah, don't like doing them. And I'm going to keep doing them for years and years of what I've got left of my career, because it's going to keep happening. So we do have a human side, honest. Right, so I'll say cheerio now. The work plan, well, it hasn't been launched yet again, but the reality is nothing is going to change. Why? You've seen why. You've seen what we spent the last year doing. How does that show any difference whatsoever to what the accident stats for the last 5 years show? It doesn't. The message is out there. People aren't listening to it. The ministerial group is looking at the workout regulations on the accident rate. What they're going to find? I think they're going to find that the guidance is risk-based. It makes people think about it. It's not explicit. There's lots of industry guidance out there. Do we need any more? Is there a gap in there? Will it make any difference going back to prescriptive regulations? I don't think so. Will they try and influence the sentencing guidelines to try and say, hang on, this is so well known, and maybe it'll put sentencing guidelines up? I don't know. Are we going to see more Section 37s? Possibly. HSC policy hasn't changed, but where is proportionate, we're encouraged to deal with it. So we will. Maybe that's the way we'll get the message home. I can see more of CDM trying to embed, to try and deal with it in the design stage. We are starting to get there. Some principal designers are starting to wake up to it, but there's still thousands, if not hundreds of thousands out there that have no concepts of it whatsoever. When we eventually start cracking the principal designers, I suspect we'll start looking at the clients. We are anyway. And if I find a bit of time left in this work here, I've got a few designers that I'm going to go and speak to as part of the ongoing project. Not sure quite where I'm going to find the time at the moment, but why? Because I've been out on site and they've been a bit poor, I've seen bits and pieces, so they're as good a target as any. When I've briefly spoken to them, it's gone, whew, because they're small designers. so drop in the ocean. But we are still going to be focusing on the CDO. We're going to be doing the health. You saw the figures. 80 thousands of cases it was each year. The costs of health alone far outweigh the cost of safety. But it catches up with you. The good old refurbishment initiatives, not a money-making scheme. We'd rather actually plan it throughout the year because it's easier for us, but it gives us an option to get the publicity. It is still a major cause of accidents. Temporary walls, temporary works. People aren't getting it right. What's the long term going to bring? Europe? No idea, to be honest. Reality is, UK legislation is embedded in UK law. So I do not foresee at this point in time any significant change of health safety legislation when we come out of Europe. The reality is, you go back to the Health Safety at Work Act. All the regulations do is try and explain it in more specific terms. So I don't see a huge change coming there. And then you look at the interesting, if you like, REACH for chemicals across Europe, CE marking. Don't know, some sort of arrangement's going to have to be placed somewhere along the line, but I can't see very much change. Nanotechnology, carrying all the rage. We have some groups looking at it at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see what comes up. Is it going to be the new silica, the new asbestos? We don't know yet. We're thinking about it, and we're trying to prevent and catch up with it ready before it comes up. Who knows? We did see a really interesting one. My colleague is doing a review of fire guidance at the moment, where it's like a hemp brick, and we're interested in the fire resistance of them, or whether people are smoking them. But finally, this one, I'm not sure if the member of the audience is here today, I haven't spotted them, came about from last year, so it's a bit of a thank you really. We come and do these, we rely on yourselves, what you see out there. This came in to us as a kind of bit of a tip-off of a concern, where charitable type body working on a restoration of a ship. One of the directors was going, I really can't do that, and this was their access. So the idea is, you're going to go up this, over here, to unlock this door, to then come out where you can see the black arrow to open up the gangway door, because it's their first access and the last one off access. So somebody thought, okay, maybe we better put a bit of netting on, because that's going to catch somebody. Possibly slightly better if they did tied it at the bottom as well, so you just drop straight through and tangle up and drowned, but hey ho. So got the tip off, and I thought, museum type thing, sent the local authority down there. No, turns out they're kind of refurbishing it and things. So my counterpart at the local authority rang me up and said, oh, you better come down, and the charity director's been a bit, should we say grumpy? So I went down there, and all the guys on the ship were fine, and see where we're coming from. So I'm thinking about serving a notice, but we're trying to encourage them gently. Nah, not having it. So the nice gentleman on the end of the phone gets put onto him, and I get, well, you know why you're here. It's not your jurisdiction at all. I can't quite do his voice. It's all down to the Maritime, Coast Guard, and they've seen it and they're perfectly happy with it. No, sir. The memorandum of understanding says you're currently in dock and refurbished. No, it's a seagoing vessel. So after a few rounds of this, I said, okay, are you currently tied to a dock, or are you in the middle of the sea? We can clearly see that. Right. Are you currently undergoing refurbishment? Well, obviously it is. There you are. Appeal the prohibition notice. That's how it was left.